Welcome to our first panel. My name is Katie Meares, and I am a Senior Policy Analyst on the State and Local Government Affairs team at Salesforce. I am actually a recent transplant from the Bay Area to Indiana. I moved here for this opportunity to work on the Government Affairs team, and it's been really amazing. You know, some of the things that brought me to Indiana to choose this as my new home for myself and my family. Of course, cost of living, we talk about that a lot. My husband's family is also in the Midwest. And just an easier pace of life for myself and my kids. And it's been really wonderful so far. We're gonna get into some of those topics on this panel. So this panel is the Remote Work Trends and Talent Attraction panel. And as you know, I think a lot of us in the room know, attracting high-skilled talent to fill available jobs has been a pain point for Indiana's growing technology industry for several years. As Indiana tech companies continue to grow or locate here, they need to have access to a skilled talent pool to attract out-of-state talent. So without further ado, let's meet our panel. We're just gonna have everyone introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Pat.
Sure. My name is Pat Meares. I'm the executive director of The Mill, which is 19,000 square feet of co-working space and business incubator in Bloomington. And that's it.
Hi, I'm Jessica Stephenson. I'm the vice president of marketing for TechPoint, and we're a nonprofit focused on making the tech ecosystem the best in the Midwest.
I'm Mike Rutz. I'm with MakeMyMove, which is an online marketplace that we're building where workers who want to relocate to communities can connect with those communities and relocate.
And I'm Lisa Evans, and I work for Resultant. We are based here in Indianapolis. We have, 360 employees now and growing pretty fast. We're a digital transformation as well as a tech services consulting company. We do a lot on the public sector side. So hopefully I can offer some suggestions and help when it comes to talent acquisition.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Welcome all. So let's get right into the questions. Many companies, especially tech companies, have removed geographic boundaries when hiring. And so allowing for some permanent hybrid work models. At Salesforce, we call it success from anywhere. Workers now with this increased mobility can move to a new town or city that has attractive quality of life features. It's a whole new game for talent attraction. So Lisa, let's start with you. As talent acquisition manager at Resultant, what strategies are you pursuing to attract talent, and how have you had to adjust those strategies based on the impacts of the pandemic and current workforce trends?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with having just hired 179 employees so far this year, and we'll be well over probably 200 by the end of this year, we've really had to think about some creative ways that we can attract the right talent and kind of change our strategy, especially in the market that we're in right now. Super competitive. We're looking for very niche targeted technical talent, which makes it a little even more challenging here in the Indianapolis area. I guess the nice thing is we are located in 6 states. So we can, look for talent across the U.S. We're looking for people who are virtual and remote. And some of the strategies that we've used, I can kind of list a few here, but I think the first and most important one is just really increasing the interview speed. Generally speaking, some people might interview 4 or 5 times, and being in a virtual kind of world that we're in right now still, keeping that time and that speed going when it comes to interviewing. So the recruiting team really has to kind of push the hiring managers along and making sure that we're doing that in an efficient manner. And then the other one is, training our hiring managers, good understanding of what potential employees will do, understanding the roles, understanding who's excelling in these roles. So when they are interviewing, they are hiring the right and the best talent, which also will expedite the process. I think another one, and this is probably not new to most of you, but our employer referral is around 40%. So 40% of our hires are through our own employer referral program, which is really high. So far this year, this month, we're even higher than that. But it's only, a couple days into October, so I guess you can't really count that. But yeah, I think having a really good employer referral program, they know the type of people that typically are going to work well within your industry, especially in the public sector, and just kind of sharing that knowledge and finding individuals who you work well with or know, and kind of getting talent that way. We've also implemented a recruiting champions program, and what that is basically anybody in the company can volunteer to be part of this program as a recruiting champion. And when we go to these different events, they volunteer to participate, express their technical knowledge, help us find the right talent. They're using their network as well, whether it's through LinkedIn or other, avenues, that type of thing. And then I think the last one that I would like to mention is group hunting, right? I mean, recruiting is not a one-man show. It takes everybody to find the right people. So from the top down in our organization, everybody is working to find the right talent. So the moment we get a new position, the hiring manager is also out there, looking, where we have employees looking, goes back to that employer referral program. So that's just really kind of a big one for us.
That's awesome. I have to take some of those strategies back to our recruiting team in Salesforce.
Yeah, great.
So Jessica, does this track with what TechPoint is hearing from the industry at large? How is TechPoint helping companies navigate these new challenges and opportunities? And are there any specific programs that you're rolling out?
Yeah, so no doubt recruiting has gotten more challenging, right? But we have to look at it as an opportunity and to shift what we're doing to attract talent. So at TechPoint, while a lot of our focus traditionally has been on attracting organizations and businesses to Indiana and to Indianapolis to grow, to expand, to relocate headquarters, and largely that's been driven by conversations around quality of life, cost of living, access to talent, and cost of operations. While we're still doing that, what we also have to think about now is what about all of the remote workers that might stay employed with their existing organization that isn't yet in Indiana, but want to move to Indianapolis, Indiana for that better quality of life. So there's kind of a renewed emphasis around that factor when I think about those three factors. And so that could be an opportunity for a groundswell of support of a few employees that could be what we kind of internally call an Apollo team for an organization to consider our region. And so in terms of programs that TechPoint stands up, there's some old favorites that many of you have probably heard of and always new ones in the works, but we do programs like SOS Challenge and Extern, which are over the summer typically, and it's all about skilling up talent to meet the needs of job categories that we sometimes don't even know about, right, of tomorrow. So it's finding top business skilled and tech skilled college talent, typically sophomore and juniors in college, and sometimes grad students as well. Their housing is covered. They obviously are with the company during the day for the internship, but then we also do programming in the evenings, on the weekend, to teach them about venture capital, about B corporations, about all aspects of business, because what this is really doing for both our community and for employers that are our partners in this program, it's not just a summer internship. It's the beginning of a potential long-term relationship with that person that maybe means they stay with you for 3 years, for 5 years, for 7 years and beyond, because you got your foot in the door with that talent while they were still here. And it's not just Indiana universities, we recruit all over the country, but fighting that brain drain and keeping those people here. And so beyond Extern and SOS Challenge, we also have the Grid, which is about connecting former Extern or Extern alumni in the first kind of vulnerable years, the 1 or 2 years after they graduate, to keep them here. And then also we're getting ready to roll out Sales Boot Camp again, which is one of our old favorites, starting in the first part of this coming year. And that's for both new grads as well as career changers that are considering sales. And with such a hotbed of SaaS here in town, that's always a popular program. But what I would say, kind of in my final remarks on this question, it's not just about talent attraction. I just got back from the SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resource Management conference in Vegas a month ago. And all we talked about was the Great Resignation, or sometimes people are calling it the turnover tsunami. So don't forget to do something about keeping your existing employees, because again, it's so much easier to get a remote job anywhere. And so we have to think about pay differentials for geographic regions. We have to think about connectivity and mental health awareness and some of those like other insidious challenges that are popping up along with this opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely, it's easier to keep someone than to go find someone. So it's a worthy investment. All right, Mike, let's bring you in here. MakeMyMove recently released data on remote work trends. Your survey found that over 30 million workers are now permanently remote, and that nearly 1/3 of them plan to move in the next 18 months. How can Indiana-based tech companies in need of talent capitalize on this trend?
So I think there's a couple things here. By the way, the number, I just saw another survey that said it was going to be 40 million. Wow. That were going to stay permanently remote. So what a crazy change. 5 million to 40 million overnight. First things first, like figure out your remote worker strategy. You have to recruit remote workers now. Mm-hmm. You have to get that, which I think is actually an advantage. It broadens your talent pool and opportunity. I just saw Elon Musk tweeted out yesterday. He's looking for AI software engineers. He's like, I'll let you be remote if you're talented enough, which just shows that like the folks that are like that want to be remote are probably some of the most talented, best workers you can get. So make sure you incorporate that in your recruiting strategy. I think the second piece is this, you better figure out how you're going to accommodate remote work for your current employees, whether it's a hybrid or whether it's full remote, whatever it is, figure it out quickly, because this is moving really fast. The Great Resignation, I think, is an example. That's a byproduct of all this change. And then I think I don't know that this is most important, but I think it's something that companies aren't necessarily thinking enough about is how do you tap into all the remote workers that live in your community or are moving to your community? I think there's some really creative ways for you to find who those people are. Like first, the most challenging thing is getting clear line of sight. Who are those individuals? Maybe you could go out and start a remote worker community, like sponsor an event that has remote workers come and network somewhere, wherever it may be. Host some kind of event at your place for remote workers. I think that one of the things that we've seen with the projects we've worked on, the communities we've worked with, is they're literally building a community inside of the community of people that are remote workers, right? They're all kind of wanting to network with one another. They're all sharing the same challenges about being remote. They don't want to sit in their house all day. They probably get lonely. So these types of interactions are really valuable to them. And one other thing that I've thought about, I haven't seen anything on this, but if remote workers want to network and look for another job, who better to network with than other remote workers, right? So because I'm sure they want to preserve that remote capability. So I think that identifying or figuring out how to become part of the remote community, or get line of sight into the remote community, or even create a remote community is something that companies should be thinking about.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. So Pat, question for you. You are leading an exciting initiative to do exactly that in Bloomington, bring folks together, enhance a remote work community. Can you tell us why you got started in that project and what results you're seeing?
Yeah, so we have a program in Bloomington to recruit remote workers from around the nation to our city called Bloomington Remote. And I'll kind of give you the headlines and then I'll tell you about why we started it. So we started it 100 days ago, a little over 100 days ago. Our goal was to get 10 folks to move to Bloomington within a year, so by next summer. As of yesterday, we have 10 folks who have either bought homes or signed leases within the first 100 days. So we've already hit our goal, and that was with only $70,000 in capital. So the amount of return the city and the community gets, the payback period will be within the first year in terms of taxes and tax revenue, and then consumer spending. Is about $50,000 per person, so $500,000 per year, and then of course that happens every year that they stay in our community. So those are the big headlines. That's kind of what grabs everybody's attention when we talk about the program. The reason we started the program is because we realized that the world was shifting to remote work, right? So we actually started on this program a little bit before COVID, about 6 months before then, and then launched it during COVID because we realized that the world is not going back to how we used to work before, right? We'll still have offices, people will still go to them, but for the most part, people will want to either work full remote or at least part-time remote, and so we need to lean into this trend. And it just didn't make sense to us anymore that this kind of old way of economic development of continuing to pursue only that, right? We still need to pursue it, but we need to kind of have a second strategy of instead of recruiting an Amazon to come to Bloomington, we recruit the workers for Amazon who can work remote. And we do have those in Bloomington, as Mike was saying. Some of the, every community has a lot of remote workers already. Every community will have more remote workers. You need to figure out how to cater to them and kind of build that community and retain those folks because everybody is mobile. It's easier to switch jobs, and so retention is a huge part of kind of the next step of what we're doing. We've attracted these folks. Now we want to retain them and make sure they kind of get embedded in our community. But ultimately, the reason for us doing this is because we kind of saw the writing on the wall with how the world was going to change, and then it changed drastically during COVID. It got accelerated significantly, and so we just felt like leaning into this was going to be the best option for us to continue being competitive and to grow along with the rest of the world.
Congrats on your success so far.
Thank you.
So this one is a kind of a toss-up question. We can go in any order here. We also have mics set up in the aisles here. If any audience members have questions, just pop over there. So if you could say one thing that you think Indiana could do today to totally embrace this new model of work, what would that be? Yes, go on.
Let's recruit a bunch of them. Yeah, I mean, like Pat was saying, the old model of economic development, which has worked wonderfully, right, is go out, land companies, give them some incentives to relocate or open a headquarters or facility in your state or community. That play has always been great, and it still is good. But I'll tell you what, it worked a whole lot better when we had more people than we had jobs. And we have more jobs than we have people now, so we have to change our strategy and think differently about it. We call this retail economic development, right? Instead of landing companies, you're landing individuals one at a time. It's like a consumer marketing activity. Oh, thanks, guys. Sorry, I apologize. Let's do a whole lot more of it. Let's invest some money into it. Pat just created with your program, and Melissa, her program, what, $500,000 you said of consumer? Yeah, that's about right. We have a program up in West Lafayette that we're working on, and we worked with Pat on the one down in Bloomington. We were able to recruit 19 workers, average salary $97,000 a year. Average economic output, $53,000, $2,300 of new tax revenue just for West Lafayette and that community for each one of those workers. And part of this trick is making them stick, right? So you've got to have a program and a way for them to integrate and become part of the community. But if they stick, what a powerful, powerful thing, and the return on investment is extraordinary. So one of the things that we're thinking about, other than the state just appropriating some funds to help communities do more of this, is let's think about some creative ways to actually finance the activity. How about TIFs for talent? What if we can finance that activity because of all the incremental tax revenue that these people are creating? Let's go give the communities a tool or a mechanism to be able to finance that recruiting activity, and we can measure exactly how much economic value they're creating. So there's some other creative ways for us to think about it, but we've got to get things moving. We've got to get the state and the communities around the state thinking and knowing these people are mobile right now, and the market is hot. 500,000 remote workers are going to move this year. Let's get some of them. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. What about for TechPoint? Is there anything that you're working with Indiana or the city on specifically to kind of help support your efforts?
Yeah, so I love what Mike was saying just about working together. I mean, I think my impression of coming into this community, I've only been with TechPoint 6 months, is just that I think traditionally there are a lot of really exciting, innovative programs, but they were operating in silos. And so one of our big initiatives is just having a collective impact. So who can we work together to move things forward? I mean, whether it's the chamber, the IEDC, folks at TMAP, like Lilly Endowment, all those kinds of entities. That's how we're going to make a dent, essentially. And I think we also should really lean into our strengths. And so what are we already really great at as a state, as a city? It's MarTech, it's SaaS, it's AgTech, it's biotech. And so are we unifying together to create campaigns that sell those strengths? And then, like I said before, really emphasizing the quality of life, the cost of living, the cost of operations. I think those are the kinds of things that we need to have a better collective impact to move along.
Can I throw one more thing in?
Yeah.
I think companies need to actually take a more active role in the active community recruiting. Like you can't just count on the government to build and fund these programs. I know employers have a hard time grasping because, how many roles do you have to fill this year? Hundreds.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You've got this near term.
Right.
But I mean, if you think long-term strategy, recruiting remote workers grows the addressable talent pool for you guys. And so I think community or companies having some level of willingness to be able to chip in or participate in the activity of recruiting these folks is something that would be helpful, even though it's not a direct benefit immediately.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Salesforce has done things like that, paying internal employees even to relocate to places in the Midwest and giving them a bonus for doing that. We have referral bonuses, things like that. So it does have a good impact. I think also bringing in some training and upskilling and working with the community, to your point, Mike, right? Like bringing in folks who maybe haven't had access to these kinds of jobs in the past, taking advantage of those folks as well can be helpful. What about you, Pat? Anything that you've done with your, local, with Bloomington directly to help you?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that, the state and other cities could do to kind of lean into this this new way of working is offer financial support, candidly. And so we've started this program with $70,000, but I also have a full staff of folks who I can deploy and say, hey, let's this be our focus. And without that staff, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. It's not their full-time jobs to start a remote worker recruitment program, and luckily we had some talent on staff that could build a website. We had relationships where we could get lots of imagery from Visit Bloomington or CVB from our newspaper, right? So we didn't have to pay thousands of dollars for our own photography. And if you look at the website, it's kind of our secret sauce to getting everybody to come to Bloomington. It's probably a $50,000 website that we bought for $1,000. So we figured out kind of how to run this program on a shoestring budget, but we can't continue doing that going forward, right? So we've got a ton of applicants. We've gotten 10 remote workers to commit to moving to Bloomington or have moved to Bloomington. But in the future, we're competing. Well, right now we are competing against hundreds of other communities who are wanting to bring these same remote workers here, and they're offering them $10,000 cash, right? So we're competing literally with $0. We give them no money to move to Bloomington. We lean into the fact that we're a blue dot in a red state. We lean into the fact that we're not the biggest city in the state. We really rely heavily on kind of the characteristics of the city to attract the right folks. At some point, though, that strategy will continue working for us because folks want money. It costs a lot of money to move. And so, we'll continue having our program, continuing to do a good job. But if we really want the state to lean into remote workers and recruit them, we have to be able to fund it. We need some seed money for these other communities to be able to get started, and for communities like us who are already doing it, for them to continue.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword when you're really efficient with very little money and resources, isn't it? So now if we can get additional funding for those programs and systems that already work, then it can really scale and make a big difference. So what are some, as you're talking to remote workers, trying to bring folks here, what are some of the barriers to folks individually, in their personal lives when you're talking to these folks? What are some things that they bring up that are barriers or things that they want to learn more about before they make that move? This could go to Mike or anyone, actually.
Everyone's looking at me.
Yeah, Lisa.
I think we have to make it attractive, right? Like Indiana is attractive to the people that live here, that stay here, but why do people want to move here? And I think there are so many good factors that I can speak to personally, but cost of living, great sized city, opportunity. So really, I think just making it more about the opportunity long term. I mean, we talk to people all the time across the U.S. and one of the first things we ask is, are you willing to relocate? And you get all kinds of answers, right? Just depending on it. But you'd be surprised how many people actually say, yes, I am, especially right now. I feel like, again, in the world we're living in, more people are relocating for various reasons, whether it's they have family here. You just never know until you ask that question. So that's definitely something we address right away. And then, talk about like, what is the long-term opportunity of being here and selling those pieces about, how Indiana's great. We're a great tech hub. We offer so much, and just kind of highlighting all of that, I think is key to bringing that talent here.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm definitely seeing friends and family in California. I mean, everyone is moving, literally everyone. Unfortunately, not here yet. I'm working on my sister in Portland, Oregon. But yeah, I mean, that's the opportunity we share, right? Like there's just the amount of opportunity you can have here versus somewhere on the coast. It's actually hard to kind of explain until you're here and can see what the community is like and how you can really have impact.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would add one more objection that we should have in mind is just a concern for someone who might be considering a move here, that if what they're moving here for doesn't work out, that there's still a lot of opportunity with so many other tech companies, tech-enabled companies. Just having that transparent conversation to give them assurance that this is a strong tech hub. There are events like this. There are programs where it's a big city, but it's a small network still.
Right.
There's that connectivity.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge issue for Salesforce, right? Because folks tend to jump around a lot in tech. So, if you're saying come here for Salesforce, they're like, but what if I don't like it? Or, what if it doesn't work out? What if I want a different challenge? So it's really important to grow the ecosystem as a whole, for sure, and show that, community that's there.
We have a handful of our folks who obviously know about Bloomington already, and that's why they're kind of excited about it, and they happen to see this opportunity on MakeMyMove. But we also have a handful of folks who've never heard of Bloomington. They've never visited, and they still committed to move to Bloomington, right? They saw the website, they like what they're, they like what we offer. Part of that is because we offer to embed them directly into the community really quickly. We offer board observer seats to nonprofits, so we want folks to be able to contribute to their new home really quickly. They can make a lot of friends. Kind of that network of colleagues is really important. But also kind of a negative trend happening across the United States that's really good for Bloomington right now is there's other states that are doing really, really weird things legislatively, right? So we're getting folks from Texas and Florida who want to move to Bloomington sight unseen. They have heard about Bloomington, they have family 2, 3, 4 hours nearby, but they don't like the state that they live in anymore. And so we can take advantage of some of these folks. We just recruited somebody this week who is in Florida. He's a cybersecurity engineer for Under Armour. This is a great, super high-paying job. It's a great brand name for us to be able to say, this is the type of talent we're recruiting. And he's been to Bloomington once, like 10 or 20 years ago, right? So he wants to live in a place that's close to family, but he doesn't want to live in Florida anymore. And he could not move here fast enough. And so we need to take advantage of these trends while they still exist.
Yeah, I agree. It's getting Indiana on the list of places that people are considering, right? When they do want to leave somewhere else and they have that idea.
I think like you touched on, I was talking to Pat earlier, not today, like months ago, And he was already thinking about retention. How are we going to make sure we retain these people? Which I love that you're thinking about that. But I think, making sure that you build this has to be done programmatically, right? You can't just, here's a check, good luck. Hope you integrate into the community and find it a nice place to live and work. So I think you have to really actually give them on-ramps into the community. And one of the things that we've done is when we help communities design incentives, we don't just say it's going to be a check or whatever. We actually talk about, okay, we're going to give you free access to a speaker series. Or Greensburg, Indiana just became a client, and it's fascinating. They did some really neat stuff, like free tickets to the community theater group, the Treehouse Players, gift certificates to the farmers market, free membership at the YMCA, a table at every one of the not-for-profit dinners, inside that community. And this is my favorite one, is Grandparents on Demand. So there's a set of, old folks that in the community, and they'll babysit for you if you want to go out and have a date night. I know that's kind of weird, but that's marketing gold.
I've actually thought of that idea for people who move here and don't have family immediately.
No, and the best part about it was when we sat down with the mayor and the economic developer there, and we're like, okay, why would anyone move to Greensburg? And their first answer was like, well, we're an hour from Indianapolis and we're an hour from Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. And we're like, okay, that's not marketing, So it just took a little time for us to think about all the wonderful parts and why you would actually want to move to Greensburg, and then put it into a nice, neat little package, right? And we'll ask them. Like, the best thing about, I don't know, Bloomington, it sounds like you had some people that were there with our work in West Lafayette. Of the 19, only 3 people had ever been to West Lafayette. And even those people who had been to West Lafayette, they basically said, West Lafayette wasn't on my radar until you guys asked me. So I think it's really important that we figure out and know, like we have some wonderful parts of this community. We just need to go out and sell them.
Yeah. And I think the great part about doing it programmatically and bringing folks into the community, it benefits the community. So you just have that cycle.
Well,
if you've got a good invested citizen.
You can measure the ROI, right? You know exactly how much you're going to invest, and pretty precisely how much you're going to create in terms of economic output.
Yeah, and there's the community output too, right? Just strengthening communities, and then that makes more people want to come, and you get that chain effect because you're improving the place where this person is. So it's fantastic. Are there any questions from the audience? No? Okay, we'll just give the panelists, is there one? Yeah. There's a microphone coming right behind you there. There you go.
So I've heard a trend that large tech companies, while they're willing to allow their workers to relocate, they're sort of balancing salary down. So like, you used to live in New York and we used to pay you X, and now you want to live in Bloomington and we're only going to pay you Y. Is that actually happening? Have you seen that? It seems like a dirty little secret maybe in the tech community that, you can relocate and work from anywhere, but we're not going to pay you the same that we were paying before. And kind of, what are some of the offsetting points that you would make against that trend?
I can answer for Salesforce. We are definitely going through a process of rebalancing this, because traditionally we've had kind of 3 bands of different areas. You're in this level, city or state, and then on down. We're trying to flatten that a bit because, to your point, we don't want to disincentivize people from the remote work, because it's actually really, it's good for us at the end of the day. If we can just keep folks, to what we talked about, they want to move to Michigan and we don't have an office there, we want to keep them if we can. So there is an adjustment, but I think companies are thinking about how much that adjustment will be. And I think some tech companies have said there will not be an adjustment, right? So I think it's something that's like part of this whole discussion that's ongoing. Has anyone else heard?
I was just going to say, compensation is at the forefront of all this, right? People are either, if they're moving here or they're willing to relocate, they understand that the Midwest is not going to pay as much as like East or West Coast, right? But if they're working virtually, the way we've seen it is, we have a range, for each role, and based on our market and what we see for that talent, will go to a certain level. But it is definitely something we're working through as well, just because, if we're hiring somebody in New York for one of our solution architects, they're going to be making a lot more, right? So we're working through that and just determining like what's the right number. I don't know that there's a great answer to that right now. I feel like everybody's working through that, but generally speaking, they have to fit within kind of where we are, right? And if they don't, then it's not the right opportunity. But I still think there's some work to be work around that to make it attractive, from a compensation perspective, because a lot of people are virtual. I mean, we're losing people, right, that are working for companies that are out in California or New York or wherever. So obviously they have that opportunity to make more money and stay home. So how do we make that more appealing to them here? And how, like you were saying, how do we keep them here in Indy? It's more than compensation. It's about being the attraction of the city and what we have going on here. And I think even more importantly, it's the opportunity. If they want an opportunity to come to the company and grow, and if that opportunity is there, a lot of times that will, what I've seen will be, above that compensation opportunity. So they'll say, okay, there's a bigger opportunity for me here. I can move up the career ladder faster. I can get to that director, that VP level faster versus at this other company. So they're willing to take a pay cut. I don't know if that answered your question.
One thing that I've heard, I don't know that it's stopped any, if it's been a deal breaker or not, but I have heard from some of the candidates that we've worked with, they're like, I thought it was going to be cheaper, because the cost of, across the country, my house is worth a lot more than it was, a year ago. And so I think they expect it to be dirt cheap, and then when they actually start to look at the real estate, they're like, it's not as cheap as I thought it was going to be. So I think that's one thing I'm watching for that. I'm a little nervous about that.
Although I will say, we actually had somebody relo from California and Chicago, and they were like, this is great. I love the cost of living here. Like this,
it's still lower.
Opened my, I mean, they're like, this opened my eyes to, that whole perspective of just having a better balance,
Yeah, I definitely had a little bit of that, what you were talking about, Mike, though, where it's like, okay, yeah, it's cheap, but like,
right,
compared to the salary cut, you got to do that math. And I do think, again, that companies are thinking about adjusting that a bit, because just cost of living in the U.S. is just going up in general.
Right.
Like food, everything is more expensive right now, so it can be tough. Any final thoughts from our panelists, or any final questions from the audience? We got one right there. Mike's coming to you there.
Excuse me.
Just one last question. This may be leading the witness for some of our future programs today, but maybe for Pat and Mike specifically that have been out in the rural areas of the state as it pertains to internet access, how does that play into this strategy?
So it does play into it, because not everybody has internet access, right? And so, I think the world is quickly getting to the point where we believe that internet access is as important as access to water, right? And it's an infrastructure, and cities are figuring out that maybe they need to provide it, and it just doesn't need to be private development, right? So that's been kind of the thing that's been holding folks back. So in terms of rural remote worker recruitment, there is an opportunity for that, but it's in pockets here and there. So as an example, we talked to the CEO of Smithville maybe 6 months ago, and we said, okay, if we're recruiting folks to Bloomington, maybe they don't want to move to Bloomington, maybe they want 10 acres in Spencer, right, which is a half hour away from us. So can you tell us literally which neighborhoods in Spencer have internet access? And he just went right through them all. That's really difficult for us to kind of parse out and to be able to help folks find homes. And so we really just kind of focused on Bloomington. And so I think in the future, when rural communities try to do this, I think they're going to have a harder time doing it. They can still do it, right? They just have to figure out kind of where those pockets of internet access are. And some communities are better than others. And some neighborhoods, literally the internet stops. You get internet access here, but 2 feet away, you do not get internet access. So some of it, the remote workers will just kind of have to figure out on their own. But hopefully, fingers crossed, the world is quickly moving towards more of a belief that everybody should have internet access. It's a basic requirement. It's an infrastructure to have kind of access to knowledge and be able to be connected to everybody.
Yeah, definitely momentum at the federal and state level to support growing broadband. All right, any final questions? Final comments? No? All right, well, thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.